hello, everyone. My name is Andy Wilson, and welcome to Servant Leadership Today. My co-host, Celia Swanson, is back.
Well, yes, I'm always excited when we get time together.
I know. Me too, Celia. So good to see you.
Thank you.
And you look great as always. We have such a great topic today that we're going to just dive into really quickly. And, you know, one of the things that Celia and I have been talking about, and I hope you've been with us all the way through these episodes because they've been so rich and all the content around leadership. But today has really a special meaning, and it's gonna be real personal today. And Celia, thank you for willing to open up and share some really personal insights today. And we're gonna begin by talking about falling forward, and then we're gonna end talking about of resilience.
Yes.
And so it's gonna be good. So 2 bookends here. You're gonna really want to hang in here because I will tell you, Celia's going to share some great insight, and so we're going to dig in. But Celia, we're going to begin and talk again about your book. And, you know, you've done such a good job on the book. I know we've talked about it before, but as again, just for our audience, it's gracious and strong. And you can get this book online at most places, and I really recommend you picking up a copy of it. But we're gonna go back to chapter 2.
Yes.
And chapter 2 is really talking about falling forward. Now, Celia, where did you come up with that title? And talk to us, give us some background on that.
Yeah. When I think about rising above the unexpected left turns of life,
right?
Falling forward is an important principle to learn and to practice and to develop. Because sometimes the change that's in front of you just completely takes the rug out from under you. You don't have, you've not experienced anything like that, and you're falling. Yeah. And the whole concept of falling forward is you can fall back, and you can never move out of the mental space that you're in. You can fall down, and you can wallow in whatever you're dealing with, or you can fall forward. And I feel very strongly that you usually fall down, and then it's a conscious choice as to whether you're going to move forward or whether you're going to get stuck in falling behind.
And, you know, all of us will fall.
Yes.
There will be falls.
Yes.
There's stumbles. It's life. And life can throw so much at you at one time. Your work life can throw, career can throw so much. You know, there's so many things out there. So if you are affected with that today, or if you have been impacted with that, this is your podcast. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is your time to lean in and learn and grow and to gain the strength and courage and confidence to get back up and learn from this.
Yeah,
because we've all been there.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's not if. If you haven't,
good point. It's a win.
And I don't mean that as negative at all. It's just life.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's just life throws at you. I love your quote at the beginning. Mm-hmm. One reason I am such a fan of the Roosevelt era in this country because of what our country was going through at the time, to the Great Depression, World War II, all of that, and we love history, and I just watched a documentary about FDR, and boy, did Eleanor play a major role.
A very important and major role, yes.
She did. Share your quote that begins, please, because I think it's such a way to enter into the space that you're about to talk about.
So the quote here in the book is, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do.
Yeah, Eleanor Roosevelt. And, in the great speech that FDR talked about, he said the only thing fear is fear itself.
Right. That's right.
And you think about the critical time of this country, there's no jobs, there's no food. We're in, the stock market crashed. The money was gone, the banks were closed.
Right.
We're not facing that. But, whatever you're facing may feel like that to you.
Yeah.
It can happen. So, Celia, let's just dive in to our conversation. And I'm just lead us off. And I've got questions I want to ask you today, but get us started.
The story that I tell in chapter 2, as Andy said, is a very personal story, but it is the best example I can share about falling forward. My husband and I moved here, 30 years ago now. So at that point in time, it was 20 years ago. And he became a stay-at-home dad, and I got to go the executive track that I so wanted to do in my career. And one weekend, he wasn't feeling very well, but my daughter came home and said, "Dad, we have to get in the truck and we have to go to Nebraska because grandmother is not going to make it. Grandma's not going to make it until Christmas." And this was Labor Day weekend. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "I just feel it in my bones. Grandma's not going to be around at Christmas, and we don't have any other plans to go see her, so let's go." And she finally convinced him, and they got in the pickup truck, and they drove to middle of Nebraska and picked up Grandma, took her to dinner, then checked into a hotel and made the trek back home to Bentonville. And it was during that time that his back started hurting really badly. And so he kept having Kendall stop along the way at places that were important in our life, where we went to college, where we got married, where we lived in Omaha, where he worked, where I worked. Just this whole story of, Celia and David Swanson. And when they got home, he still wasn't feeling well. And we went out to dinner and, kind of wrapped up the weekend, them telling me all about it. And the next morning, I had to run out because I had a big meeting with the CEO of Walmart US. My daughter ran out because she had hair appointment before she went back to college. And when she got back, she saw his truck still in the car or in the driveway, but she couldn't find him. And she hunted and finally was panicked at this point in time and went into the office there at the house. And he had fallen out of his office chair, and she believes he still had a heartbeat at that point in time. So she called a very close friend. She called 911. She was doing CPR. I get a call from the close friend that you must come. I don't care what you're doing now. You must come. And I'd never gotten a call like that. So, and all my friend said was, "It's David." And so I got in the car and drove myself home. And when I got there, he was being carried out of the house on a gurney to the ambulance. And I remember touching him. I remember talking to him. And then I remember going in the house and just trying to understand what happened. What did these two folks, Kendall and my friend, know? And where we were going to, what our next step was going to be. And clearly it was to follow the ambulance to the hospital, which we did. And again, I got in the car. Kendall's my passenger. I'm driving to the hospital, and she's peppering me with questions. "Mom, what could it be? Mom, Mom, Mom." And I would just calmly say, "We don't have the facts yet, so we're not jumping to any conclusions. Let's be, talk to me about what happened, share the experience." And once we got to the hospital, he They worked on him for about 45 minutes, but he did not respond, and he died of a heart attack. It was a widowmaker heart attack. Now, my husband was 6'2", tall and lanky, and worked at the stables every day, so did lots of manual labor, rode his bike, all the things that you would think he'd be healthy. Didn't have heart disease in his family, and yet that was what took him, a heart attack. What was, that moment in time was filled with friends who had heard that he went to the hospital, and they were gathering from Walmart and from just friends gathering in the emergency room, waiting room. A police officer who was insistent that he talk to me about our relationship, what was going on in our relationship. I mean, he was belligerent almost. And then my daughter, who found him and thought she had kept him alive, and then that wasn't true. And then the doctors. And it was just confusion. But for some reason, I stayed strong and steady through all of that, even when we got to go in and see David before they took him to the morgue. That moment was very special and personal. And my daughter to this day will say, I don't know how you drove us. I don't know how you kept your composure. I don't know how you navigated through all of that and didn't really lose it until it was, it was done. It was, his life had ended. And that actually is resilience that you've learned from past moments of grief or change that have been so substantial in your life. And the road following that, planning a funeral service, everybody coming in and being, family and everyone wanting to be there and supportive. And for about a week, you just have a massive support system that carries you through all of that process. And then, and at about 10 days after, everybody's gone home. Daughter went at 2 weeks, went back to college, and you find yourself woefully alone and sad. And really, that's when the falling forward process happens, because there were mornings I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't understand why this was happening. It wasn't fair. I was angry. I was angry at God. And, I'm a faith-driven person, and that was hard. But I had friends who guided me, and I had my faith that helped me decide that each morning I was going to get out of bed, and I was going to take one step each day to fall forward. And it's really that every step is a choice, and every choice in that process was made out of deep sorrow and deep love. And what I've come to accept and understand is that this is all God's plan. It's been predetermined long before it happens. And, at the moment that I'm in now, my daughter just got engaged. She's pregnant. She's having a boy, and the boy's middle name will be David. And there is just a circle to all that God provides. And when you're deep in the sorrow, it's very hard to see that anything positive is going to happen as a result of this. Many positives happened.
Well, Celia, thank you for sharing that. And for our listeners and audience, Celia and I have talked about this moment a few times, if we could come and do this, and she could do it, and she has. And so thank you for that sharing that experience. And I think the thing that I would at this point ask you, if our audience, listeners, if you're stuck in these, what I call these grips of fear,
Yes.
Grips of change, grips of grief,
Yep.
you have now navigated some learning out of that. Because that's who you are. I mean, and we've known each other a long time, and you've always, no matter what you've gone through, you at some point you look back and say, "What can I share of the learning?" And one of the things in your book that you've done, that you've talked about, was instead of falling prey to self-survival mode, fall forward. I like that. Walk us through some of those points that could help our viewers, listeners, fall forward. Can you share some of those things with us? And then let's talk about those.
Yes. Are you talking about breaking the fall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first is to face into the reality. You kind of have to step outside your own body and emotions and just face what are the facts and the reality of this situation. And, for me, journaling through this process was really important. And I did use the help of a grief therapist, to help me through the process. But her job really was, let's face the facts and let's face the reality of this situation.
What was the timeline? And it's different for all of us.
Yeah.
But
yes.
From you talked about, you found, in 10 days, you find yourself alone. Life continues.
It does.
That's hard to say.
Yeah.
And it can be bitter and angry.
It's hard, and you are angry.
Yes. So when did you get to, okay, I've got to get back up. I've got to face into reality, your point there. When did you get to that point? How long did it take? And it will always be different, I'm sure.
Yes. It's a great question. I went back to work 2 weeks after he passed. And that was a big step in falling forward, because I had to prepare myself for walking into a corporation where I'd worked for a long time and people were big supporters of mine. And I knew I was going to have to face lots and lots of questions about it. But again, I had a couple of really dear friends who asked me questions that I should be prepared to answer before I put myself in that situation. So Giselle Reese, she said to me, how do you want people to approach you and to treat you as you come back in? And I thought, first of all, don't treat me as if I'm broken. I'm sad. I will cry when I talk about David and when I reflect on the situation. Doesn't mean I'm any less a leader than I was before. I'm broken at this moment, but I'm not damaged goods. And there is such a difference about, I'll never be able to lead again, or I'll never be the, vibrant, effervescent person that I am. And that was really important to me. And Giselle understood how to translate that and to continue to give me hard challenges. Even though she wasn't my boss, she was a strong influence on me. That was very helpful. So it was, it was about between that 10-day period and 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, several people questioned me whether or not that was good timing. And I said, I can't sit in this house and not re-engaged back in life.
Right.
So about a 2-week period for me.
Well, so when you face into reality, your first thing there, how did that feel?
Unfair, completely unexpected. Like all my future plans were built around what David and I were going to do, right?
Right.
And we never got to experience those.
Right.
Gratefulness that Kendall had decided they had to go to Nebraska because then he got to see his family, got to see his mom. I mean, the greatest shock was making that phone call to her and telling her he had died. She just said, that can't be. I just had dinner with him Sunday.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know, but it's true. And so I lost my train of thought there, but that's how I felt.
The next point you talked about was own what you should own.
Yes. And
explain that.
In this situation, you could blame yourself in a big way for what did I do wrong? What did I not see in David's health? Why didn't I insist he went to the doctor sooner than I did? There's all kinds of ways you can twist the story to say, I did this, or I had a part in it, or I didn't do something properly. And none of that was mine to own, right? Yes, that morning, should I have insisted that I take him to the hospital because he still wasn't feeling well? Or to the doctor? No, I can't own that. He was also an adult and, he wouldn't have stood for that. And so that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. Don't put a different story in your head than what you actually should own about this situation.
You in your book, there's you talk about calling out to yourself what you're the most afraid of.
Yes. And the reason that I say that is, again, learning how to rise above is all about facing into your greatest fears. I would have to say most people's greatest fear would be the loss of their spouse.
Right.
Or child, like either one of those. And facing into your greatest fears is a form of preparation. Not that you want it to happen, but that you're conscious about how you might walk through that walk should it ever happen.
Right.
And that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Third point, make a hard, right decision to step back into life.
Yes.
So that's when you went back to work.
Yes. And I call it a hard right because there's all different options. And do you want to step back into life? Okay, you are going to step back into life. Making the hard right decision, because there are many you can choose from, is being very deliberate with a perspective on the other end about, okay, you're going to get through this next stage. What do you want your life to look like when you get to the other side? And then it's just consciously making steps, small steps that turn into medium-sized steps that turn into large steps that get you back into a thriving life.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not a marathon the first day.
No.
Because I think that would be a huge mistake. I'm not a psychologist, but I could see you could burn yourself out and create even more issues around that. And I think that's what I would want to do. Is go run a marathon or something, but don't do that. Take take those small steps and and I think your point that I'm going to underline is you said you have to rebuild your strength.
I was just going to go back to that statement, Andy, because that's you. Yeah, you're now at your weakest moment, and unexpected, uncharted waters. You don't know what's going to happen next,
Right.
but you have to build back your strength. And it's like going to the gym for the first time when you haven't been there in a long period of time.
Right.
You start simple, and then you continue to build your strength so that you can actually outperform even where you were before. And that's what I mean by building your strength. And every day, like every night, another friend, after I started back to work, she would call me every night, and she asked me, what time should I call you so I can check in? It was 7 p.m. And we would talk about what did I learn from that day, what was hard, what did it feel like, and how do I build my strength back? And it was so tremendously helpful to, you have to let it out. You can't, if you keep it all inside, you'll implode. But so having somebody that you can have that conversation with, obviously it used to be David, but that wasn't possible anymore, was just so helpful in building back my strength.
And the fourth step, find joy and satisfaction.
I never thought I would feel joy again. I did not think it was possible to. Right. And then through my journaling and, counseling processes, there was, this challenge by the grief therapist to say, what brings you joy? And how can you bring that back into your life? Joy can, does, must exist in your life. Right. And then satisfaction, just, okay, I'm doing the best that I can, and believe that every day, that you are doing the best that you can. And then, you're building your strength. And at some point, this is not going to be this dominating black cloud that's around you. It's actually, and even telling this story today, it's a way to help others. It's a way to be available for others. And I said to you earlier, I got a call from a friend who said, the worst possible thing has happened to a dear friend of mine, and that is her husband just passed away of melanoma. And he went in 10 days. And she now finds herself in a very similar situation that you found yourself. And I couldn't think of anybody better to call and ask questions about how can I be of help to her? And, will you meet her? And will you, be available to answer her questions and guide her as much as you can? And I believe that is exactly what God wanted me to do and wants me to do.
Right. Yeah, that happened today on this recording, just before you got here, and so which is pretty amazing.
Right. That's it. Again,
here we are recording this podcast, and you were dealing with that.
Yes.
I mean, not dealing with it, but you were answering a call.
Yes.
Anyway, which is amazing. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that insight. It was extreme. I can't imagine how difficult that was for you, but thank you, because I think you will help many by sharing those insights. Mm-hmm. So thank you for doing that.
Yes.
What else would you share with us? Because I know we want to move to another topic today, and I don't want to rush through this at all, but what else would you share as we summarize this breaking or falling forward? What else would you share with us?
For me, I draw energy from people, from any, social environment, but work, great teams. Find your path to get back into that arena that brings you energy. Clearly I'm an extrovert. But if you're an introvert, find ways to use meditation, to use time with God, to use tools that can help you get back into a place where you can find joy and thrive and re-engage in whatever that arena is. Just keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
If you don't, it'll grip you again. And, never did I think, and it's been 11 years now, right? I tell people, I think for the first 5 years I was in a fog. So you might have to, give me some hints on a story, that you say this happened, because I was in a fog. I mean, I had never done my own taxes.
Yeah.
I was in a big house all by myself, rattling around, going, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I had a dog that he left. That I was like, I wasn't a dog person. Now I'm a dog person. Like, some funny things, but some crazy things too, that you have to open yourself up and just say, okay.
Yeah, right.
This is the reality. So make the best of it.
Again, Cindy, thank you. We're gonna move to another chapter.
Yeah.
Of Celia's book. But thank you, Celia.
Yes.
I know that you will help. This will help many.
Thank you.
So thank you for doing it. Okay. There's another chapter in Celia's book, The Secret Ingredient.
Yes.
Okay. So when I read the book, I went, okay, I got to get to that. What is her secret? So why don't you introduce this chapter about that? And we're going to go deep into her secret ingredient. So let's do that.
Well, again, with the topic, the subtitle of the book is How to Rise Above the Unexpected Left Turns of Life and Leadership. So the secret ingredient is resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the quote I have here at the beginning of this chapter too. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. Isn't that true? We get stronger and more resilient.
Well, that's true, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
that's after we've been knocked down. Some of those things we were just talking about,
right?
When you're gripped in that fear and that,
yes,
and that's personal career. When you're gripped into that, and you've got to be strong.
Yes,
and I do too. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient.
And resilience is learned. Resilience can be taught. It can be practiced. It can be a guide.
Mm-hmm.
When all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you,
right,
or you face fear. And that's the point. And I think in today's world, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday as we were preparing for the podcast. Post-COVID, the world is not the same.
Absolutely.
The world is topsy-turvy right now. And oh my, I think resilience is one of the most important leadership characteristics that you can possess. But again, my point being, it has to be practiced. It can be learned, but it doesn't just happen. And so from each of the experiences that you go through, take the lessons, apply them, and build this resilience factor in yourself.
I think you're so right. As leaders today, as we, post-COVID. We learned a lot during COVID.
Yes.
Learned a lot. It very unfortunate happened to the world.
Right.
But through that, back to what you shared with us, there's learnings there for us. And I believe that as a leader today, I see, and I'm sure our audience sees too, there's leaders that are doing a great job post-COVID, and there's leaders that are not.
Yes.
There's companies that are thriving today because of great leadership, because how leaders have changed, how leaders now are leading the teams and communicating with the people. With their leaders, and why many people are unhappy at work and discontent. Then you see the opposite of companies, that people are extremely happy, people extremely engaged, people are content, and things are just going well. So much of that has to do with leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how leaders now are being resilient, and the people inside those organizations are. So I know we're going to talk about some questions you have asked us in this. So let's go through some of those questions and talk about that. Is that like a plan?
Yeah, great.
I was going to ask the first question. You said, how can I rise above the grips of my current conversation? The grips. Yeah. Some of us feel gripped in our current situation. What are your thoughts around that, Celia?
How can I rise above?
Yeah. How do you rise above the grips of the current conversation?
Yeah. It's stepping back and, again, face the reality. Don't make up stories in your head about what should have been or could have been or was or wasn't. What are the facts? And look at them through a clear, mind, a clear lens. Because sometimes it's not as bad as you think it is.
Right.
And other times you may have been protecting yourself. And quite honestly, it's worse than what you've allowed yourself to understand. But again, I journal a lot. And so writing down what are the facts in this situation, and then honing in on those facts. What makes me uncomfortable? What's causing me to be dissatisfied? What do I have control over? What do I not have control over? And assessing, I always believe you have to be part of the change.
Right.
So you can't sit on the sidelines and expect all these other people to change. Quite honestly, the only one that can change you is you.
Right. And I think, too, and I love that. I underline what you just said there. But, as leaders and you're leading organizations today or teams today, one of the things that I think is critical about resilience is also, being very resourceful, being optimistic, being energetic.
Yes.
And I think, leaders will need today, post-COVID, in this current situation, I think our leaders need to be optimistic and caring and dealing with others in order to build those genuine relationships with their people. I think that's so important coming out of COVID or in this critical time, is that leaders have to be genuine.
Yes.
That fake stuff doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, genuine relationships.
People are not buying it. People are leaving companies that are not doing it.
Well, they can see through it, yes.
Yeah, they're not. You know what? Look, because we came through a very difficult time, just like your quote we shared at the beginning of our podcast about the Roosevelts and the Great Depression, then the war. Look how FDR, he was so optimistic. Mm-hmm. He was so resourceful. He was so energetic, a man with polio.
Yes.
And as leaders, we have to be that model.
Yes.
Don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's how we arrive. I think that's how we lead our teams to rise above this grip of this grips of our current situation.
Yes.
I think we have to do that.
I love those three.
Yeah, I do too. Those are powerful, aren't they?
But optimistic is,
mm-hmm.
I've always seen the glass half full.
Yes.
I have never seen the glass half empty. I just simply don't believe it's half empty. I think there's opportunity inside that glass.
Yes.
And it matters because if you're trying to pull a team through, an experience or a challenge or to rise above, you have to be the one who's painting a vision of success and, optimism.
Right. And, as leaders, as we look forward in our business and where we are as a country and globally, there's so many challenges today. Those challenges are going to become easier.
Right.
They're going to be. It's going to be more. And I think that you have to look back as a leader and you're not in this as a solo. You're in this with your team, and you can't just give orders and expect it. You've got to have a conversation. You have to have that relationship with your people. You've got to be open. And I think that one of the greatest things as leaders we have to do is that we have to share what we don't know.
Yeah, Sandy. Yes.
And I know I keep referring back to the period in our country that we spoke about, but it sort of feels like some of that today with inflation and with other challenges and all the things that we've come through. We're going to get through this as a country, as a team, as a leader, as a company, and we have to get through that. But I think we've got to realize that as leaders, we can't do this solo.
That's so true.
And
humility is a really important component of leadership.
Yeah.
But you balance that. Humility would be going to your team and saying, I don't have the answer to this particular challenge, but let's all come together and ideate over what are some possible ways, through this.
Well, I think
then it's taking back your role as a leader and being decisive and creating a vision based upon the solution that's been presented, and be the champion of that.
Absolutely.
While the team works through the solution that's been identified.
I think that what you said is so important, and what I would do is underline. You have to be honest and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders, you can't fake it, and you shouldn't fake it. We should never try to fake it.
Right.
You've got to be authentic.
Yeah.
You've got to be honest. And even that goes back to your earlier message to us when you were getting back up. And your friends said, you got to be honest. I'm going to cry.
Right.
I am. We have to be that. That's who, because people see us. If we're not honest, we're not authentic. If we're not honest, we're not authentic. Then we're not being truthful. And we don't buy that anymore from our leaders.
And we shouldn't.
No, we can't cover that up.
All right.
And you shared that with us. Another question is, how can I create opportunity for others when I feel the weight of the world is crushing me?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
It probably goes back to that glass half full philosophy that, others have gone through this. Except for new world experiences,
right? Most
people, there's somebody out there who's gone through this before. So how can I learn from them? But how can I turn that into an opportunity to help someone else? Right. That's what I realized about telling the story about David's passing. Yeah. I don't want to be a widow. I don't want people to look at me and have that, written across my face. Because I'm much deeper than that definition. Right. But if I don't tell the story, then no one ever gets to understand what it was like to go through that.
Right.
And when it happens to them, I want them to feel comfortable to give me a call. Or a friend is going through this. I want your advice and counsel on it.
I agree.
And I think, that's what happened for me in the process of falling forward, is that I felt the weight of the world on me.
Sure.
But I had to find my way to understand there was also opportunity to help others.
And, I think as we think about that as a leader, what I would say is that as leaders, we have to learn to deal with complexity because our teams, our businesses are very complex.
Mm-hmm.
It's so complex today. And you have to, as a leader, you have to learn to deal with ambiguity because many decisions are not clearly spelled out anymore because we haven't been there.
Mm-hmm.
They're new. You had never faced what you faced.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us who, to your question, we feel this crushing us down. We've not faced these things before, but we have to how do we deal with this complexity? How do we rise above this complexity? How do we make decisions? And that's where you bring your team around you.
Yes.
And you talk with them. You share with them the complexities. How do we do this? Mm-hmm. You're not alone. You didn't do this alone after David passed away.
Right.
Because you kept talking about the people that came around you. Even after the 10 days, there were still some people there. And there's still people there today, I'm sure.
Yes.
But you've got to get back up like you talked about. And in business and in personal life.
That's exactly right.
And that's easier said than done.
So much. Yeah. The words make sense. The actions are very hard.
Celia, how did you do this? How did you were walking through this, as you said your words, you were gripped with this grief. Mm-hmm. How did you influence people around you when you were in this? And like this is about me. I don't need. You had people reporting to you. You were reporting to leaders in the organization. But how did you do that in a positive way without being bitter?
Yeah, I had to get over the bitterness, and not. It was a process, but it was easy for me because, again, I had deep love for my husband, and I had my faith. And so, not being bitter really never was going to be my choice.
Good. You chose not to be.
Exactly right. I chose not to be. Influence came by people asking some great questions and myself reconciling with what do I want the storyline to be after I move through these stages that I know I have to move through of grief. What do I want people to say about how I handled it? What do I want people to learn? And how could I influence people? Influence actually was much more about the actions that I took and the model that I wanted to be for others who were dealing with their own grief and fears. And so it was a more quiet journey. It was a more reflective journey. It was a more purposeful journey. But how I chose to show up said more to people than any words that I could have shared. But how I showed up, what I showed up to, how, I conducted myself. And your point back to, I'm going to cry. Yeah. Like, don't let that fool you. It's just a sorrow response, right? But so just let me. I mean, that's what I said. It was just let me cry. I'll get my composure back in a minute or two, and then we'll be back on, the path again. But how you show up is the best way that I can say how you influence others in a positive way.
I think I understand why you titled this book "Gracious and Strong" after today.
Oh, that's awesome. Explain why, though.
Because you had to be gracious and strong. I mean, you came through what you did, and you're here today. You wrote a book. You learned a lot. But when you think about what you were and are today, what you had to be, what you are today, you were gracious and strong. And I think that's the message for our viewers and listeners. It's how to rise above the unexpected left turns of life and leadership. And Celia, today, I can't thank you enough for sharing those unexpected turns of life.
Yes.
That you've done that today.
Well,
so thank you.
I believe that's God's calling for me. And I'm glad it's impactful. I'm glad it resonates. I want it to resonate with our audience and help them pull through tough situations that they're in. Right. But what's so interesting about the title of this book is that I didn't come up with it. Someone said, that's how you led through a situation. And I saw you and watched you for years. And I was tremendously complimented. Sure. I work with this person now because that was such an insightful statement and so many proof points along the way. But thank you for that compliment and reinforcement that it's the right story and it's the right description.
Yes, it is. Well, I cannot thank you enough. We've had many podcasts. There's many more to come. And we want to thank our viewers and our listeners for joining us at Servant Leadership today because, Celia, it's been very impactful podcast today. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I can't imagine how difficult today was for you, but thank you because you've helped people today. And
that means the world to me. So
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you have done this today. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Any closing comments?
Just that you can actually face your greatest fears. You can, and you can conquer them. It's not easy, but take those small steps to face them, and you will come through them improved and different and positively.
Well, I'm Andy Wilson, my co-host Celia Swanson. What a day, what a morning. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back very soon with another podcast, and we're going to talk much more about leadership and life. So again, thank you very much. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a wonderful day.